Hey everybody, my name is Aaron and I quit my job to start a startup. It's called Hihat and it's an app that makes being a fan into a game. I post new video blogs every Wednesday, so make sure to subscribe. And I just want to warn you that today's video blog is much longer than they usually are. It's over 7 minutes long, so just to warn you, it's also much more technical. This week I'm going to talk about bugs. When I first showed the app to somebody, one of the questions that they asked about apps in general to try to get a handle on how this whole thing works is, how do apps get bugs? And I think it's an interesting question because I think most people, when they encounter bugs in programs and in games, they sort of throw their hands up and go like, what is this? These developers couldn't spend the time to fix this basic thing, whatever. But software development is very, very complicated, and there are a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into all the details, but what I'm going to talk about today more specifically is a bug that I created for myself and then fixed. So I'm going to describe the symptom, and I want to try to give you an idea of how weird the process is of discovering a bug, trying to figure out what the problem is, and then fixing it. So the symptom was the check-in functionality suddenly appeared to be broken. What was happening was that I would hit the check-in button and it would appear to succeed, and then in the list of people who were checked into the show, instead of showing me, it would show the image that represents someone that doesn't have a profile picture, and I have a profile picture. So the first thing I go is like, oh, that's weird. Let's look at the list with the name next to it and see if it's me, but with the profile picture missing. And it wasn't. It was unknown user. So then I thought, okay, that's weird. Why does it think a different user checked in? Who does it think checked in? Now there's a system that I built that can get a list of user IDs without all the details like their name and their profile picture image, and then go and get that stuff separately. And the reason I built it like that is so that whenever I get a list of players in chat or leaderboard or RSVPs or check-ins, that I don't have to send over all the names and profile information because I might already have it. So what happens is the client says, like, give me the list of people that checked in. And the server says, here's a list of player IDs. And the client goes, okay, here's a list of players that I've seen before, and here's a list of players that I haven't seen before. Server, here's a list of players that I haven't seen before. Give me their information. And then next time the client gets information about those players, like their IDs come in a list, it won't have to go and get their images and their names. Okay. So that system was working properly because there was an unknown player ID that was checking in, and it was successfully showing that it was unknown. It was successfully going back to the server and trying to go and ask for who that player was. But the real problem is that the ID that it was thinking checked in as soon as I hit the check-in button wasn't me, which is weird because it should be. So I poked around some more. I looked at the data that was being returned from the server. It was correct. So that means that between points A and C, there was some sort of unknown point B at which this was going wrong. So I looked through the code, and I find that when the data gets recorded after the check-in in the client, the wrong player ID is being used. And I'll mention that I have a distinction in the app between a user and a player. The naming is sort of a little weird, but basically your login and password are part of your user record. But every time you subscribe to a new band, it creates a new player record. And the reason I'm calling it that is because for each band, you have a different set of goals and achievements and a different points balance, which is like a game. So you have a user and you have multiple players per user. Each player record represents an instance of a user subscribing to a band and having points with that band. Now, at some point in the past, it wasn't written like that. It was just written so that there was only one player record in an app at a time because I was going to build multiple apps and force fans rather to download one app per band they were interested in. And when I changed that so that it's multiple bands in one app, I had to rewrite a whole bunch of code. And one of the things I had to do was go and draw the distinction between data that was associated with the user record and data that was associated with a player record, and make sure that it was always going like, get the current player if you're signed into a band. So there'd be a list of players and you're signed into band A, and you'd say, get me the player information for band A because I want, their points balance or something like that. So then it goes player manager, give me player A, and it gives them that. So I had to go through a lot of code and change references from current user to current player, but sometimes keep current user because sometimes that was what I wanted. And it turns out that I messed that up in one place that I didn't catch until now. So what was happening is that when I was RSVPing, it was correctly going to the server and saying, I'm going to check into this show. And then the server was sending back the correct data saying, this is the player ID that checked into the show. And the client, instead of looking at the data that the server sent back, was taking a shortcut and saying, I know that I triggered this, so give me the current player ID and create a record that says that I checked in, and then display it. And that's the part I messed up. The part I messed up was when I was refactoring the code, like 2 months ago, there was one reference where I accidentally said, get the current user ID instead of get the current player ID, and those IDs are not the same. So it was saying that a player with the ID that was equal to the current user ID had checked into the show, which is wrong. So that was a long explanation, and I hope that if you stuck through and you didn't fall asleep, that it gave a picture of why apps are complicated and how things can go wrong in seemingly very simple ways. It was a single line of code to get an ID for the current player that was wrong, that was resulting in behavior that appeared to look like a different player, an unknown player, was checking in to the show in response to me checking into the show. Crazy, right? So I know that was longer than usual, it was more technical than usual, it was more complicated than usual, it was more specific than usual, but I hope it was informative and entertaining. I make new video blogs every Wednesday, so please subscribe. Hopefully they'll all be shorter than this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Oh, also, I didn't get into Y Combinator, but it's not a big deal. I'm just going to keep moving forward. Not going to let it faze me. All right, see you next week.